Well, firstly, I have to say that there is nothing democratic about this proposed democratic reform bill to completely push a fundamental piece of legislation and a fundamental change to the composition of our parliament weeks before our general election, despite not having had any consultation for 4 years other than a 35-minute meeting 2 months ago, is an absolute farce and an insult to the intelligence of the people of Gibraltar and to the integrity of the parliament and the democratic process. And I am actually amazed by the government's audacity to even go there at this late stage and push it through like it's something that was completely on the cards and very well consulted upon, because it hasn't been.
But isn't it the result of a select committee process, a select committee that you were a part of?
Yes, I have been a part of a select committee that didn't meet once in 4 years until 2 months ago for 35 minutes to let me know, between the government and the GSD, that this was a fait accompli. And in the meantime, I was told would benefit me, despite me letting these members of parliament know that sometimes some of us politicians don't do things to benefit ourselves, but to have respect for the democratic process and for the people that we represent.
So one of the ways it may benefit Together Gibraltar is that there are more seats on the opposition benches for individuals to gain experience of Parliament. Is this one of the ways that it may benefit Together Gibraltar, a young party?
Possibly, but I don't even want to go there. I don't even want to discuss the logistics and the possibilities and the arithmetics of whether this benefits my party or not. What it doesn't do is it doesn't benefit the democratic process. It doesn't do anything for democratic reform. The reform is actually totally ineffective because the cabinet, in connection with the Article 45(2)(b) of the Constitution, it says that 13 ministers can be appointed by the chief minister. So there you go. You'll have another blanket majority where the executive can grab more power, and it will. So the reform is actually a total farce because it defeats the purpose that the government is trying to tell you that it's there to do. Backbenchers aren't going to vote freely.
To be clear, you don't think it's going to enhance democracy?
It's not going to enhance democracy at all when the government has, in the bill, it states that you can now have 13 government ministers. So the government will still have a blanket majority. So there is no added democracy. What there is added costs, added favors for friends, nepotism, and ensuring that, the government believes that this will add to their longevity. This is why it's been rushed through weeks before. There's no other reason. And let's not forget, they put in the motion that this is a pilot project. I mean, how much more of an insult can you get? Pilot project meaning what? Let's try it out for now because it works for us at this election. And once we see that it's a complete and utter mess and that it did nothing for democracy, we'll go back and we'll cancel the whole thing. But for this election, let's use it as a pilot project.
Why do you think that the government thinks that it may benefit them?
Because it's clear that the government wants to enhance its majority in Parliament and its executive powers. And it's also a well-known secret that government has people waiting in the wings who want to form part of the government benches, while at the same time the government seems to have a problem letting go of its current ministers and having a sort of rollover effect. So if you have a government that still has 10 government ministers that want to keep standing and a few more want to join, this is how and the only way they want to do it. What people must recognize and note is that the government wouldn't be able to do this without the support of 2/3 of the House, and that includes the GSD Opposition. The GSD Opposition is as much to blame for this reform as the government, because without them, the government would not be able to push it through. And obviously, the GSD is of similar style to government in the sense that it has a hierarchy when it chooses its own candidates for a slate. It doesn't purport to be as democratic or transparent in choosing its slate and its members of parliament, like my party, for example, which has a totally transparent and egalitarian way of choosing candidates. So, of course, it benefits both parties because they have the same style of authoritarianism, and they believe that they can enhance enhance majorities and power if they carry on espousing this type of reform.
Well, you mentioned the GSD. You stood with that party at the last general election, and the manifesto included the enlargement of Parliament.
Absolutely. But what I didn't stand with the GSD, and even if I was with the GSD today, I would have never, ever agreed to allow or to approve a democratic reform that happened in the space of 35 minutes once in 4 years. You can have manifesto commitments or you can have ideas, but it doesn't mean that that just because you have the idea, you rush it through weeks before an election, and you're bound to that because you initially said you were into democratic reform. This is not how you do it. This is not how you respect the people that you stand for. I have my ideas on democratic reform, ideas that at the time I would have been clear about, and there are ways of enhancing democratic reform. It doesn't have to be in this way, weeks before an election when there hasn't been any consultation. I think that Gibraltar is crying out for a fairer system, which is cheaper, which is more democratic, where you perhaps could bring in the possibility of having more independent members of parliament. There are many people at the moment put off by the party system, and I can't say I blame them. Individuals who have a lot to contribute, who would be there without being shackled by a party machinery. I also believe that we could reduce the ministerial posts to 8, for example, and extend parliament, have ministers without portfolios from 8 onwards, extending parliament as well with voluntary MPs. But this has to be done by involving experts on parliamentary reform, by involving the citizens, by involving the whole political spectrum, not by having 2 parties get together over 30 minutes, months before an election, and tell you that it's a fait accompli and that it benefits you. That is absolutely the most undemocratic part of my 4 years in Parliament that I have seen, and it's shameful on the government and it's shameful on the GSD opposition. And Together Gibraltar will be opposing this and campaigning to backtrack it.
But notwithstanding, the government's intention is to bring about this change before the next general election. Together Gibraltar is a young party. Will it be hardest for you to present a full slate of 15 candidates?
Jonathan, like I've said before, it is absolutely irrelevant whether my party can bring about a slate, whether it can't, whether it swims or whether it sinks. My duty as a member of parliament is to hold the integrity of the people that I serve and to hold the integrity of the parliament that I sit in. And this is an absolute farce for the people of Gibraltar, and for the government to say that this is enhancing the democratic process is simply a lie. And it is completely shameful that this government purports to bring about democratic reform in this way. Perhaps my party will have 15, perhaps it won't. We have seen quite a lot of interest since we launched our campaign for the candidature, and we're very happy with the feedback, and we're very keen to put forward the contenders. And I have to say that it's shaping up very nicely, but that is completely irrelevant to the issue at hand. The issue at hand is about how government has pushed through these reforms just because it suits them at the 11th hour, because they want to somehow extend their longevity, enhance their own power under the guise of enhanced democracy, and completely have a situation which will only lead to nepotism and to exactly what we don't need more of in Gibraltar, in a way that's going to cost the taxpayer more money, and in a way which is completely not going to enhance democratic credentials of our parliament. Let's not forget that there is a report that was produced by the Commission for Parliamentary Reform, and most of the respondents were against enlarging Parliament. There was only one respondent that was for it. There are many other ways that you can enhance democracy. You don't have to enlarge it by number of people. And the only reason that the government is doing this is because they know that it benefits them. And the only reason why they've left it to the last minute is because they know that it is a very disingenuous move that does not benefit the people of Gibraltar. And I'm surprised that the GSD has actually fallen for it. But at the end of the day, like I've said already, they are a party which has also worked in similar ways with a hierarchy and an authoritarian style. So this brings no democratic reform whatsoever. It's actually a very dangerous move, and I'm actually very saddened that we have got to this stage weeks before a general election with zero consultation. We know that we have a problem with our democratic process. We recognize that there are fundamental problems, but at the moment, the only way to enhance democracy is to actually open up the conversation, to get experts on the matter, and to involve the entire political spectrum, the citizens of Gibraltar, and discuss how we can improve the quality of our democracy without increasing the quantity and the cost simply because one party believes it suits them for electoral gains.